So we're talking about the school lunches and this mandate that came out. If you want to give a little bit of context as to where this idea came from, we can start there.
Yeah, look, it came from moms across the state of Oklahoma. I'd heard this hundreds of times, if not thousands of times across the state. I was just at an event a few weekends ago where there were several mothers that were asking me about, why do we continue to see these lunch bills at the end of the month? Is that not covered in all the costs that we pay into the school district? And, it was one of those things like, well, that's a really great point, right? As we begin to look at it, we look at parents and taxpayers are paying taxes locally for school lunches. They pay them to the federal government, which comes back if for school lunch programs, hundreds of millions of dollars worth. And yet we have districts across the state that say, well, we're going to go ahead and charge you again for those lunches. We're not going to cover them. It's ridiculous. Frankly, it's a predatory practice. The school districts need to prioritize kids instead of continuing to increase their administrative budgets, which we've seen increase over 14% in the last 4 years. So they continue to hire more administrators. They continue to grow bureaucracy instead of putting kids first. So we're going to end that practice and make sure that parents are getting what they paid for. And part of what they paid for is their kids to eat at school.
Yeah. So if you can talk a little bit about some of the school districts that we've talked to in the Tulsa Metro said they hadn't heard from you directly. Can you comment on if schools were involved in this decision and what communication you had with them?
Yeah, sure. We told them what they need to do. I mean, it's really unfortunate that I've got to sit here and say, listen, you should actually feed kids at your school. So I'm happy to walk them through that and help them understand that instead of hiring their buddies, instead of trying to create more administrative positions, they should actually value the kids in their district and allocate their budget accordingly. All of your viewers sit down with their monthly budget and they sit there and they allot money for groceries, they allot money for their kids. But for some reason, these school districts decided that wasn't important to them. It was more important to them to hire more administrators than it was to feed kids in their school. So, you know what? They're going to have to get their head straight. They're going to have to reprioritize. And so, yeah, it is a mandatory directive. They're going to do it. So they need to figure that out. It's really unfortunate that I've got to come in here and make them do it. They should want to do it. They should want to do it for the kids and parents of their district. But this is the way we're going to do it.
Is it your understanding that most schools in the state are requiring that students pay for lunches?
No, most schools are covering this.
Okay, because that was one of my questions was
Yeah.
the three districts that we heard from yesterday, Jenks, Broken Arrow, and Bixby, say that they've got these students covered. Broken Arrow has a Love account where they make sure these students aren't paying for it. So is it that there's just a few schools that aren't covering this that has
Okay. So hold on. So the districts that are reaching out, they're against it, they don't like it, but they say they do it.
so the schools that we've talked to, yes, say that they're doing it. I think everybody's on board with your goal to get these children fed, but I think it's the approach where some of these districts, Broken Arrow is saying it'll cost them an additional $8 million to do this.
Okay,
So,
so then they're not paying for it. I mean, this is what I'm saying. These administrators are playing games and they're gaslighting Oklahomans. They can pay for it. They have a record amount of funding. They get billions of dollars. They spend $660 million just on the salaries of their top paid administrators. So they have the money to do it. They're making a million excuses here. Pay for the kids' lunches. The lunches cost around $3 a day. We give each school about $13,000 per child. The kid could easily eat for less than $500 a year in your district. We give you $13,000 for that kid. What are we doing with the money? I'm telling you what we're doing with the money. We're growing bureaucracy. We're growing administrative costs. So you're going to hear administrators make all kind of excuses. It's not that difficult. Slash your budgets, slash my budget here over 20%. It's not that hard to do. You just got to do the right thing. You've got to prioritize. I'm going to tell you, when I came into office, I said I want the largest tutoring programs in state history. I want massive summer school programs, and I want to make sure that teachers have signing bonuses so I can recruit the best and brightest back to the state of Oklahoma. And guess what that meant? That meant slashing budgets around here. So we did it. We reallocated funds. That's exactly what every district should be doing right now.
so is it about children being fed lunch at school, or is it about getting rid of these administrative positions?
It's both. It's twofold. Yeah, I mean, they should be getting rid of these administrative positions a long time ago. I mean, first of all, there's no reason we should have more administrators now than we did years ago. I've slashed red tape here in the agency. We require less of districts from red tape perspective. The Trump administration is slashing regulations at the federal level. The Federal Department of Education is going away. They have less paperwork to fill out. They have less administrative work to do, but they want to continue to grow their administrative costs because that's what government does. They grow bureaucracy unless you fight it. And so that has to happen. But listen, they also should have been feeding the kids from the beginning. I don't know how this isn't one of the top priorities of every district in the state of Oklahoma to say the kids are required to be here. The parents have paid a lot of money in taxes. And again, just like President Trump cut the tax on tips, why did he do that? He said, listen, the middle class is just getting wrung from every perspective here when it comes from tax policy. I'm looking at this policy in a very similar way. So you're telling me the middle class gets taxed locally, gets taxed federally. You require their kids to go to public school, and then you say, and parents, we're going to send you a bill for the lunches. They were already taxed. This is a triple tax on parents. So yeah, I mean, districts should have done this a long time ago, and we're going to end it. We're going to put an end to it. And so we're going to make sure that these kids are supported, and we're going to make sure that we get these bureaucrats out of the way and put money to the kids.
So I appreciate you bringing up that triple tax thing because I think that was something that stood out to me in your message. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think it is kind of a jarring message for parents to be like, wait, how am I being taxed 3 times for this?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So here's why I'm saying triple taxed. We collect money at the local level through property taxes, through state income taxes, et cetera, that are going into the school system. That part of that money is literally allocated for student lunch programs. The federal government gives us hundreds of millions of dollars through the income taxes they collect, through all the other taxation policies they collect to the state for school lunches. So hundreds of millions of dollars are allocated for school lunches in the state of Oklahoma through your tax dollars. So not only do we give every district thousands of dollars for every student for their time in school, we literally give them earmarked dollars for school lunch programs. So that's what I'm saying. If every taxpayer, you've paid for this program, you paid for it locally, you paid for it federally, and then a school district's hitting you with a bill, that's another tax to say, listen, there's actually more to pay here. So that's where I think that is a predatory practice. It's been paid for. The money is there. We have a record amount of funding in our public schools. And so why in the world would you then send a parent a bill when you've collected all of those fees already?
I think some of the concern from some of these districts is that this mandate's coming out in the beginning of June and their budgets were already set. Can you explain why you chose to bring it out now and not earlier?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's unfortunate that I've got to make them do the right thing. They should have done this already on their own. I mean, it's unfortunate that they decided to propose budgets that didn't support the kids, didn't put the kids first, number one. Number two, I'm also going to say they are required to submit to me their budgets for their accreditation process. So I don't, they can pass it to their local board whenever they want, but they are going to have to submit those to me this year. And we will not be accrediting them unless they are able to pay for student lunches. So again, they have not turned these into me yet. They have not turned them over to the State Department. So our child nutrition team, our school support team is going to be happy to work with them on fixing their budgets. But again, this process for us and what they're going to be submitting to us is just getting going. So that's what they're going to have to prioritize in the budgets that they submit to me.
So I saw that you said that if these districts aren't complying, you will be launching a investigation. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
we will be investigating them through an investigative audit. We will be looking through their budgets. We will then be telling them how to allocate the funds to cover this. And again, if they can't do it, if they can't figure out how to cut some bureaucracy and administrative cost, we'll come in with an audit ourselves and we'll show them how they can do it.
As state superintendent, do you have authority to tell these districts how they spend the money that they have?
Absolutely. They have to submit their budgets through me, which must be approved through the State Department for them to receive their accreditation. So that's the process we will be using to ensure that they comply with this mandate.
Okay. So I think some of the confusion that we're having in our districts here locally is that they're saying they're already making sure their students have lunches and aren't making them pay for lunch, or if they don't have the funds to pay for it, they're still giving them food. So I think where these districts are saying it'll cost me 8 million, it'll cost me 1.5 million, it'll cost me 5 million is the reallocation. So I guess if these students are still getting lunch, why this mandate?
They're gaslighting you. Students are not getting lunches. So like again, they're making up the most nonsensical arguments I've ever heard. Either the kids are getting fed every day or they're not. I mean, there's no in between here. There's no gray area. Either the kids are getting their lunches every day. And by the way, part of this mandate is they're going to provide healthier school lunches. I mean, I'm absolutely tired of the nonsense of kids getting red food dyes, kids getting these overly synthetic foods. We are requiring districts to have healthier options. I've heard this from so many parents, frankly, from moms. I mean, I've had so many moms tell me, I cook healthy at home. I try to make sure my kids are doing the right thing from a nutritional standpoint, and they go to school and they eat stuff that's not healthy. There's no education around it. So, by the way, we are replacing our nutrition standards, our health standards in the state for next year so that kids can have a better understanding of all those things as well. So, it's about education. It's also about what they're being fed. But districts have money to do this. They continue to push this gaslighting around they don't have the funds. They have plenty of funds. They have a record amount of money. They can cover it. So they're either providing every kid in the district lunch or they're not. And so they need to quit trying to manipulate and lie about the numbers here and just be very clear with people. Either you're going to prioritize every kid eating or you're not. It's really that black and white on this one.
Okay. Can you verify? I believe the law requires that schools are spending less than 5% of their administrative costs. Is that accurate on lunches?
No. So this is something administrators are great at gaslighting on this too. What it says is they can only spend 5% or less on certain administrative salaries. That is not administrative cost holistically. So they're always going to come to you and go, oh, we can only spend some. Okay, that's a load of garbage. So again, what they designate in that 5%, yeah, sure. But what they spend on overall administrative costs, the federal government says that we as a state spend more than 50% of every dollar in education towards administrative cost. More than 50%. That's not me. That's not my agency. That is NCES. That is the National Center of Education Statistics. Oklahoma spends more than 50% of every dollar on administrative cost. So again, they're taking everything into account. They're taking, and again, that's everything administrative cost wise, right? So they're going to throw this 5% number at you, but they've got a million ways around it. That's why you see all these job titles that are so different in a district. You got a dean of students, you've got a director of whatever, because again, they are able to label things differently. The easiest way to look at it is, what are you spending directly on kids? What are you spending directly on teachers? Everything else, we need to be really looking very closely at, shouldn't we? Because everything else, obviously, it's part of the operations, but we've got to get back to the basics in education where we're focused on the kids and the teachers in the classrooms and not all of this administrative growth.
So then does it come down to what you define administrative as? Because some of these districts are saying some of our cafeteria employees are administrative employees.
Sure. Well, sure they are. I mean, look, yeah, I mean, that's fine. Again, they are trying to manipulate this whole conversation by gaslighting. Well, of course, there's going to be some administrative costs. I'm not saying take it down to zero, but when the National Center of Education Statistics says that it's over 50%, that's a problem, right? How about we bring it down to 10 or 15%? How about we do that? How about we go to a place where we say, listen, of course, there's got to be some administrative costs because you have operations around a district. But I don't want the operations around a district to be bigger than the actual educating of children, than the actual feeding of the children in the school. That's where we've gotten so out of whack. And if you tell people, remember, for the first time in state history, 2 years ago, right before I was elected, the numbers came out. We hire more non-teachers than teachers in schools now in Oklahoma. Something's wrong there. Okay, something is wrong when we're hiring more staff that are non-teachers than teachers. We all want good teachers in the classroom. We all want to continue to recruit teachers in the classroom. So why is it when we give record amount of funding to our schools, instead of hiring more teachers, instead of putting more in teacher pay, they turn around and hire more administrators, they hire more administrative staff. Something is out of whack, and what's out of whack is the administrators are prioritizing themselves, their buddies, their administrative cost over our kids and our teachers.
And I think people agree with you, right? Like every child deserves a meal to get through the school day. But I think for some reason the approach is what's throwing people off.
Well, can I push on you on that?
Go ahead.
I don't think everybody agrees on it. I don't. I think everybody agrees with, yeah, I mean, it's easy to say these things, but when you talk to an administrator and you go, well, you can do those things, like you could pay you could literally use these costs to make sure every kid has lunch. Well, they don't want to do that. They don't want to make the decisions to actually get this done. And that's where we're going to continue to fight them on this. I'm going to unapologetically defend the parents of the state of Oklahoma that say, we already paid for our kids' lunches. If you looked at our property tax bill, we have paid for this already. They're right. And I'm not going to let administrators gaslight them into believing that they somehow magically can't afford to cover school lunches when they've got a record amount of money in their bank accounts.
So Broken Arrow, one of the biggest districts, right? About 20,000, maybe more students. They said even if they cut all of their administrative costs, it still wouldn't cover the shortfall. So where where are these funds supposed to come from?
Yeah, no, he again, they're doing their gaslighting here of, actually, if we just cut our administrative costs, which we only count as our principals and superintendents, we don't count all the deans of students, we don't count all of their staff, we don't count all of these projects. If we just count this little sliver, yeah, if we cut this, then we couldn't do it. No, no, no. Let's look at administrative costs. Let's have the real conversation that Oklahomans want to have, which is, look, we were happy to invest in our schools. I think most Oklahomans, most taxpayers, like we want to invest in education. But we want to make sure our dollars are being spent the right way because here is the truth. The problem isn't that we need more money in education. The problem is that the money needs to be allocated the right way. The problem is that the money isn't going where it needs to go. So we need to have this conversation. Oh, they need to open up their books. We're happy to go through their books for them. We'll do a full audit. We'll make sure that they understand what programs are significant and important and what programs need to go, what officials need to go, and prioritize kids, prioritize the classroom. If they do that, kids will be a lot better off. And again, if they want to come out and tell parents, no, we want to tax you again for it. We think we should charge you again. That's our position. Yes, you've paid us twice for it through your state taxes, through your federal taxes. And now we're going to tax you again as a school district. I don't think that would go too well for them, but they might as well own it that they believe that they would rather have more administrators. They would rather have this giant administrative cost rather than covering lunches that have already been paid for.
Is there a scenario where there's a small rural district that truly doesn't have the funds? You go through it, you audit them, and you find they just don't have the costs to cover lunches? And if there is, what does that look like?
I doubt it. I don't see the math adding up there. But listen, we're open to working with every district. So that means, look, if there's ever some strange scenario where listen, there can be strange scenarios. I will tell you, I've been doing this a little bit long enough where there are some districts that you go, that's a unique problem you guys got. Like that, that's a pretty interesting one. That's what we're here for. That's why we work with them. That's why they submit their budgets to us. That's why we're always, I mean, every day, my staff have got, everybody in this building, we're talking to districts every day to help them get to where they need to go. So again, here's what's going to happen. We're going to zero these out. We're going to make sure that taxpayer funds are allocated the way parents want them to be. And we're going to, if districts need help in doing that, we again are happy to help them. They've got to drop the excuses though, and they got to be ready to work with us. But yeah, absolutely. We'll be working with any district that needs help getting there.
Okay. I think that's about all I have. Is there anything else that you think is important that we might not have covered about what districts and parents need to know?
Honestly, you asked me more in-depth questions than I've been asked on this yet. So no, I think, yeah, I think that was, I think we covered most of it.